Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Arizona Illustrated for Friday, the 21st of September, 2012. I'm Jim Ninsel, host of Political Roundtable, our weekly analysis and commentary on local, state, and national politics. Tonight on the Roundtable, we'll find out what's going on in the race between Congressman Ron Barber and his Republican challenger, Barber-McSally. And we'll look at some TV ads in the U.S. Senate race between Republican Jeff Flake and Democrat Richard Carmona. We'll also unpack that Fast and Furious Inspector General report and talk about the best ways to bring Hollywood stars back to Arizona. Joining me this evening is Pima County Democratic Chairman Jeff Rogers, Tucson Tea Party founder Trent Humphreys, and former Republican state lawmaker Pete Hershberger. Thanks to all of you guys for being here. Trent, let's start with what's going on with these federal races. We saw this week the hidden camera footage of Mitt Romney at that fundraiser talking about the 47%, which has kind of reverberated in the presidential race this week. And I've heard this talked about a lot at Republican debates. I've gone to this whole question of 47% of people not paying income taxes. And it seemed as though Mitt was kind of conflating the people who don't pay income taxes with people who are Obama supporters, and I don't know if there's necessarily an exact crossover between those two groups, but there's been kind of a split among Republicans at this point, with people who are saying, yeah, that's a really good message for Mitt, and people are saying that's not such a good message for Mitt. Where do you come down on that?
Let's talk about the context of the remarks. That was a fundraiser, and Mother Jones didn't actually give us the complete tape. It is edited. There's portions taken out. Mother Jones has since admitted that there's portions of that conversation they didn't have. And I think what Mitt was trying to talk about is people want us to, the Republicans to go on that we need to cut taxes. That's a big thing for us. And Mitt was trying to make the point is, look, no, there's a whole percentage of Americans out there that's just not going to be a big issue for them. And we can't spend a lot of time talking about that as opposed to other issues. And I believe, and again, remember, this wasn't something he said at a debate. It's not something he said at a stump speech. Something he was saying to investors, asking the question, why aren't we making this more of a push in our campaign? And that's his honest answer was like, there are a lot of people who just don't pay taxes, or else it's the tax issue is not a big thing to them, and we're going to have a hard time winning those people if we concentrate on that issue. And I think that, of course, as the press wants, they do. They blow things up a lot. And it's interesting to see that during this time was also the time that we find out that, with the disgrace we had at the embassy, that it turns out that the video wasn't the big cause of that. And we hauled people out of bed at midnight, and Tucson Weekly said nothing about it. Okay. That needs to be, we talk about things like that. And and we go in about this big fundraising speech, and nobody ever said anything about the State Department was basically lying, saying that the video was the cause of this, and it turns out that it was completely false, and provably false. So it's interesting how the press, which is, they go ahead and they make these different statements that try to obfuscate what's going on in the real race and don't hold people accountable for what they should be held accountable for.
All right, Pete, your thoughts on how
I'm a little perplexed by the context of the writing on your hand. In answer to your question, I think a single gaffe does not change the campaign, but it's a series of gaffes, and it promotes the perception that Romney doesn't care about anybody but the top wage earners in the country. And I think that's very damaging when you add that on. The Romney campaign has had serious difficulties over the last week or two, and it does look as if it has some down ballot legs, and it may do damage to some of the other Republican candidates.
Jeff, your thoughts?
Well, he looked like a sneering plutocrat, basically making fun of or disrespecting half of America. I mean, the fact is that of that 46, it's 46, not 47%, almost two-thirds of those people are wage earners who are earning below $26,000 a year and are paying payroll taxes of about 15.3% of their income. and that's Medicare, Social Security, and otherwise, right out of their checks, which is more than the percentage Mitt Romney paid in his taxes, which I think was 13.9%. So, I mean, it's completely disrespectful. Some of those people contained within that 47% are combat veterans in areas of combat right now. They don't have to pay income taxes on them or their family while they're in those areas. Many of those people are actually probably Republican supporters. A new study has shown that 8 of the 10 states that have the most people who pay no income taxes are in the solid South that are all Republican states. So there's a myriad of people, and as you said before, he's conflating Obama supporters with people who don't pay income tax. Well, many of those people are Republicans, and many of them are elderly living barely on Social Security and nothing else. So I thought it was disrespectful. And I think he's going to lose a lot of votes. And this does appear to have legs. It's affecting a lot of polls. Nate Silver, in the last 2 days, the guy who does statistics for the New York Times and studies polling data, has suggested that he may have lost the election with this. And you compound it with the fact that he was so disrespectful just a week earlier when we had deaths in our consulate in Libya. And then you add to that the fact that I mean, this is a man who wants to be president. Well, he's got to at least have some diplomacy. And what does he say in this same tape? He says that the Palestinians aren't interested in peace. Well, they may or they may not be, but the fact of the matter is as a president, as a potential president, as a diplomat, you don't say that one half of the potential peace equation doesn't care about peace. And so, he's just shown himself to be unfit, unprepared, and unqualified to be president.
Because the Obama diplomacy in the Middle East is going so well. So well.
There is some diplomacy going on. This is a man who's absolutely. I mean, what did we say? He went abroad, and it was a parade. It was a parade of insults to some of our finest allies for over hundreds of years. I mean, this is a man who as the president says, he shoots first and aims later when he says things.
Right
and you
now,
cannot do that.
In Pakistan, we are running ads. We are running ads apologizing for a YouTube video. We don't do that in America. We have free speech.
None of these ads have apologized. And that's another thing that's been another big lie told by the Republicans. There's been no apologies whatsoever. What we have done is say, we are a free country, people can do these things, but it was deplorable to put out a video trailer that did what this one did. And it was deplorable. Even Mitt Romney said it was deplorable.
I'm a Mormon. Am I going to get an apology for the Book of Mormon play on Broadway? Hillary Clinton went to that and enjoyed it. Loved it.
Well, I'm not.
Am I going to get my ad saying that we deplore all things that make fun of religion?
I'm not so sure that actually makes fun of Mormons. It actually kind of celebrates them. And many of my Mormon friends have said they don't find that offensive. That they found that it actually gets their religion out there for people to see and see what's good and wonderful about it.
There's a little effect. Mormons going to kill people over it too.
Oh.
Well, listen, we're not going to solve the Middle East crisis here, but I do want to talk about the down ticket effect. Because I spoke with Barber-McSally in the Congressional District 2 race this week. She's running, of course, against Congressman Ron Barber. And when I brought up the 47% question, she basically said that the comments were inappropriate and is trying to distance herself from them. And so you think there is any kind of down ticket effect?
Tim Kaine, who's running in a very contested election in Virginia, basically came out and made the comment that everybody should have skin in the game. Everybody should pay at least a little bit of taxes and have it done that way. So I think it depends on where you're at if it's going to have an effect or not. I think in places like Massachusetts and places like that, yeah, it's going to probably have an effect, but I don't think it's going to affect the overall tone of the election at all. Now the question is, does it play in the swing states? And it's been my experience that people will look at that, and even people that are in the 47%, they don't see themselves as in the 47%, whatever that is. There are people that look, there are definitely problems with what we have, and our entitlements have gotten way out of hand, and people realize that. And people are going to get to the point where, well, who deserves to have these entitlements and who doesn't deserve to have them? Who could be doing better on their own? And that's an argument that's going to come up. And that's something that's going to probably dominate our political discussion for years to come. And I think it's important we have this discussion because we can't pay for all the entitlements that are on the books right now. We just can't. And so it's going to come to a point where we're going to have to decide, well, who gets help and who's going to have to do a little bit more on their own. That's going to be a discussion that has to come up. And if it doesn't, we're doomed because we can't pay for it otherwise.
And do you think it was smart for McSally to distance herself from the comments?
Absolutely. She said the right thing because it was inappropriate. And I don't think it's going to hurt her. Her issue is name recognition. This late in the campaign, she doesn't have the name recognition. She doesn't have the support from the National Party. And I think her campaign is in trouble as a result of that. But what she said was very right on.
And she really seized on Ron Barber's comments to the Arizona Daily Star this week, where he referred to the Republicans in Congress as basically a bunch of white guys. And
yes.
is that a gaffe by Ron
old
Barber?
White guys.
old white guys.
Old white guys.
Yeah, a gaffe by Barber on that fourth floor?
Yes or no? A lot of people's perception is that it is a party of old white guys. And I don't think that's going to hurt Ron Barber at all. Again, the issue is name recognition for Martha.
Jeff, your thoughts?
Look, just 2 weeks ago, Ed Rollins, who was one of the people that Ronald Reagan relied upon the most and is still a GOP organizer and pundit of sorts, he said, we are a party of old white guys, in fact, mostly old fat white guys like me. And we need to expand our base to include Latinos and African Americans. And that's an almost direct, exact quote from Ed Rollins. So they realized that, and they realized that when their convention was held, and the cameras panned the crowd, not the people they marched up on stage, but panned the actual crowd. It did look like an almost entirely 95% white audience and more men than women. And so, the Republican Party has some work to do to look a little bit more like America. And if they're going to have to change some of their policies and attitudes on immigration, on women's rights to control what decisions about their body, and things like this to attract the kind of diversity that you saw at the Democratic convention, which was basically that rainbow that is America.
And Trent,
I'm going to go, before we go any further, I'm going to go ahead and commend you, Jeff, for being able to say something like that without the vitriol and things you said last week. I think you probably realized some of the things you said last week were way beyond the bounds. When we talked about, there wasn't a Tea Party before we had a black president. When we talked about, Tea Party people bringing guns to things, and we saw how that turned out. Now, we have to do a better job. You're the moderator of this program, and when people say stuff like that, we have to. No, wait. I'm not done. We have to do a better job because and hold me accountable too. If I say things are way out of bounds, you need to hold me accountable, and because we can't have this show because people trust this show, and I've said I've come to learn and know, and we can't have this turn out to be the comment section of the Daily Star. So I would hope that all of us would do a better job about looking about how we say things and what we do, because there's consequences to that, Jeff, and there's consequences to that.
Let me respond to you and let me tell you what I said, and I'll tell you why it's true. There's a wonderful book out there called Over the Cliff, How the Election of Barack Obama Drove the Right Wing Insane. And it's a wonderful read, and I recommend it highly for you. But what it shows is that there was a lot of anger and racial resentment underlying some of this Tea Party stuff. Not all of them. I know you well enough to know you're not somebody who entertains those kinds of beliefs. But there is a lot of racial resentment going on there that fed into a lot of anger. And then that anger was noticed by people like Dick Armey and Freedom Works and some of those groups, the groups that he run, and then the Koch brothers basically said, let's fund that. And suddenly what we had actual funding, and Dick Armey and Freedom Works coming in and organizing some of this Tea Party stuff. And what we were talking about last week was Ann Kirkpatrick, and when she came home for a town hall during that summer, these were organized. There are now memos and emails and all kinds of stuff to show that they were telling these people, get up in the front, crowd the stage, interrupt the congressperson early, shout them down, and shout the people down who want to talk about the issues. And that's what we were talking about, and that was organized, and that's exactly what we were talking about. And those kinds of things went on all across America. It happened to Gabby Giffords down in Douglas, and some people were toting guns, and there were memos suggesting that they do things like that. It happened in Phoenix, and it happened to Ann Kirkpatrick in one of her town hall meetings. That was absolutely inappropriate. That anger that we saw in the summer of 2009 was an ugly underbelly of politics, and I hope we never see anything like that again. People are entitled to confront their congressperson about their votes and hear about it, but you shouldn't be at something where you're shouting people down, an angry mob crowd that keeps the congressman from communicating with his or her constituents. That was what was going on, and that's what we were talking about. And I stand by my remarks.
That didn't happen here, Jeff.
It didn't happen in Tucson.
But the thing of it is, though, is that for you to go and make the assumption that people go to these rallies because they're racist, Because
some of them are.
They showed up with guns.
You saw the signs with Obama with a turban on his head, the signs where they did all kinds of things to distort his features. You saw those signs. Now, they got better after the first rally down here, but I went over and walked, because one of the rallies was across the street of my office. I walked across the street and walked through that crowd to see the kinds of signs and stuff that we saw.
I'm just asking that, look, if people start calling people racist with no room, if I call people racist with no room,
I didn't call anyone racist.
When we get to the point where we're saying that people brought guns, that's what led to Gabby Erfel's getting shot, there has to be a line drawn somewhere.
All right.
And I would hope that would happen. Even if I do it, hold me accountable.
All right. Well, I like to have a free and lively conversation on this, so I think that's what I like to keep up. But we are rapidly running out of time already, so let's talk about the U.S. Senate race that's happening here in Arizona. We did see some new polling this week, but I'm not sure how trustworthy it is. It showed Carmona in the lead, and we haven't actually known the source of that, so let's disregard that. But let's take a look at these advertisements that are going on, beginning with a Jeff Flake ad here.
Richard Carmona was recruited by Barack Obama. Jeff Flake is supported by John Kyle and John McCain. Carmona is for Obama's health care law. Flake's against Obama's health care law. He supports a realistic plan to strengthen Medicare. Obama's man in Arizona, or Jeff Flake, Arizona's man in Washington. Some decisions are just easier than others.
I'm Jeff Flake, and I approve this message.
All right, so that was the ad that the Flake campaign launched this last week, and we've obviously see the message there is linking Richard Carmona to Barack Obama and stressing Jeff Flake's independence. Let's take a look now at the Carmona ad that's also running.
I've seen healthcare as a combat medic, nurse, and trauma surgeon, how it can save lives. But I've also seen it as Surgeon General, how politics can get in the way. Republicans and Democrats both got it wrong. We've got to make healthcare affordable for small business and working families through innovation and preventive care, while also cutting waste and fraud. I'm Rich Carmona, and I approve this message because it's time to tackle tough problems together.
All right. So again, I think another ad that is also stressing independence, and in this case, rather than tying Jeff Flake to someone, he's basically tying Jeff Flake to Washington. Pete, how persuadable or how persuasive are these ads?
I think they're both very good ads, and they both accomplish what the campaigns want. In Flake's case, tying Carmona to Obama and to the health care. In the Carmona's case, introducing himself to the voters and putting himself in the middle and wanting to compromise and work with both sides. So I think actually they're both very good ads.
Trent, your thoughts?
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I agree wholeheartedly with Pete. I don't think I've ever said that before, but there it is. Yeah, it does exactly. I mean, that's the strategy both of them are going to have. You're going to have one that says, the only thing I would have done, I would have thrown Harry Reid in there too, because I think Harry Reid's likables are a lot less than the president's even. And I make sure that, look, the first vote that he's going to take is to put a yes vote for Harry Reid to be president of the Senate. I think that's the only thing I would have included. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, that's what Carmona has to do. In fact, it shocks me he didn't start doing this earlier than he is right now. I think that time's growing short. I think he should have been doing this a month ago.
And Jeff, it seems as though we're seeing, reading Nate Silver in the New York Times, a shift away towards Democrats in hanging on to the Senate. Some poll numbers in other states that are showing Democrat candidates on the rise, but Nate Silver's still giving Jeff Flake the I think 70% chance of winning here in Arizona. Your thoughts on whether this wave will actually reach Arizona?
Well, I think this is going to be a close election. I think it's going to be decided by 2 or 3 percentage points. I think that poll we heard about earlier this week, 5 points or something like that, I don't think that was a realistic poll. I think, and I'm hearing that it was something that was tagged on to a poll that was actually done for a proposition or something. So I don't think we can probably just ignore that. I think that these ads show that the Republicans are pretty desperate to find something to come at Carmona with, because if you look at his background and his qualifications, combat veteran, wounded warrior, SWAT team member, trauma surgeon, all these kinds of things, the Republicans are really desperate. And so what are they doing? They're trying to do what they did 2 years ago with some congressional races and say, she'll vote with Nancy Pelosi. Well, this one, he's handpicked by Obama. I don't think these things work that well. I just don't think that they do. I think that the quality of the ad is very good, but it's kind of like I'm endorsed by these people and he's endorsed by that person. Well, I'm just not sure voters really respond to endorsements, or in this case, the anti-endorsement. I don't think the voters look at that. They're really looking for something that tells them about either their character, and in Carmona's case, an independent who was worked for a Republican White House, or issues. I think they're a little more interested and moved on those kinds of things.
And Trent, shifting topics here, the Fast and Furious Inspector General report came out this week. What do you think the key takeaways from that were?
You know, there was a lot more information given. The key problem still is the Inspector General did not have the information that the Obama administration is sealed up. And if we're going to believe that nobody above a certain level was involved, why would there be any need to evoke executive privilege on those documents? I mean, I would want those documents to be released and complete the investigation. The investigator himself admitted that, yeah, there were certain areas that we couldn't investigate because we didn't have the documents. So they did the best with what they had. And obviously some people are going to be held accountable, which is all we've ever wanted, is to find out what happened, why it happened. But I do think that in order for us to get the complete picture of what happened, to make sure that we need the full picture, and those documents do need to be released.
And Jeff, your thoughts on the Fast
I think
and
somebody
Furious?
owes Eric Holder an apology. Darrell Issa certainly owes Eric Holder an apology. We believed all along, and there was that wonderful Fortune article that together with this, when we look at this, we know this was a stupid idea. Who thought of this? I mean, obviously it first started under a wide receiver was the name of the operation in the Bush administration, and it continued on into the Obama administration, and it was never signed off on at the highest levels of the Department of Justice. There were people at the U.S. Attorney level and at the very low levels of the Department of Justice who became aware of it late in the game, but this is something that should never have happened. And a man lost his life because of this stupidity. So, it was crazy to engage in this kind of stuff, but we now know who was at fault, and heads have rolled, and heads are still going to roll. They named several people in this that I think will probably lose their jobs, be demoted, probably, or resign. So
Hundreds of people, not just one, hundreds have died.
Yeah, probably a dozen.
No, hundreds.
And Pete, your thoughts?
I think it was a failed experimental program without checks and balances and proper accountability. That's evident from the report. I haven't read the whole 400-page report, but one thing that I've not seen from the descriptions of this report is the issues between justice and the prosecution. They're following these people who are buying many firearms from a gun store, straw purchasers, and they don't have then the authority from the prosecutors to go get these people. And so they wait and they wait and they wait for the prosecutors to come forward, and in the meantime, these people vanish. There are some real problems that have been brought up by this investigation, and I think we ought to follow it. But certainly a failed program without accountability.
All right. I want to turn to a local race, Pima County District 1, where Ann Day is retiring. You have Republican Allie Miller facing Democrat Nancy Young-Wright. Some endorsements in that race this week, the Chamber of Commerce, and Marana Mayor Ed Honey endorsed Allie Miller, and Nancy Young-Wright got the endorsement of Bruce Babbitt. Do these endorsements count for anything in that race, Trent?
The thing is that the people in those areas are so new to Arizona. I'm not sure that Bruce Babbitt carries as much weight as it would do maybe in central Tucson or some of the older areas in town. In a district supervisor race, I think that the one endorsement that would make a difference would be Ann Day herself, if she made an endorsement. Otherwise, I don't know if there's a lot out there that's going to make a difference as far as endorsements go.
Pete, you're supporting Nancy Young-Wright in this
Yes,
race.
I am. And let me start by saying that Ann Day has done a tremendous job in that position and has created a legacy that will be very hard to follow. One of her projects that she was devoted to was the Sonoran Desert Conservation Plan. I'm really concerned about Allie Miller and her Tea Party affiliation and background and what she'll do with those environmental issues. In addition to that, there's all this shady stuff with the tagline company going on in that race to where there are independent expenditures that may or may not be connected to the Miller campaign. We need the light of day shed on that. There needs to be an investigation on that. So we have a lot more information to get, even though the election is going to happen very soon.
That spending in that primary probably helped Allie Miller get over the top with the television advertising.
Probably
and the
did.
newspaper
Probably
advertising.
did. Also, having so many people in the primary probably helped her. But Nancy Young Wright's campaign today filed a complaint with the Secretary of State and with the Division of Elections, joining Stuart McDaniel from the primary, Republican primary, and joining Mike Helen in attacking what's going on here, because there's something devious going on here. Tagline media, all roads lead to tagline media, and multiple different independent PACs and stuff, and Tagline has represented Allie Miller in the past. And I might add, the only thing I agree entirely here, I actually agree with both these guys on this, that the endorsement that would matter is Ann Day's. Maybe Mike Helen's to some degree, because the moderate Republicans Ann Day-type Republicans seem to follow him, so he might be important in what he thinks about this race, but certainly would like to hear from Ann Day who she'd like to sit in her chair. That might be helpful.
Okay, and we're down to, I think, about a minute in the program here, but I didn't want to leave. We're going to have to forget about the Hollywood incentive bill, but let's talk about Sheriff Larry Deaver, who died in a car accident in Cochise County.
Just devastating.
Coconino County.
Just devastating. Look, I met the sheriff once, but I know plenty of people that are very, very close to him, and they just had a hard time. I mean, he was such a good man, and he was so useful in bridging the gap for border issues. I mean, he's the one guy that could coordinate local, state, national efforts. That people would take a phone call if he called, and it's just not him in his office was great, but him as a person, it's just devastating.
Pete, about a half minute left.
Respected by everyone. It's a tremendous loss for all of us.
Jeff?
He was an important man in southern Arizona for all of his entire life, and so anyone who gave 30 years or more of his life to law enforcement in a difficult area like that, you've got to respect. And he was a healthy 60-year-old man, just a few years older than me, and so I think this was a devastating shock to everyone.
Yeah, and we've seen condolences from folks on both sides of the aisle. I think he will be much missed. That is all the time we're going to have for tonight, but you can learn more about what's happening in politics by visiting azpm.org. And while you're on our website, we'd love to hear your thoughts about tonight's program, so be sure to leave us a comment. And to find out the latest from AZPM, follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Stay tuned next for the News Hour, and then at 8:30, tune into Arizona Week for an in-depth look at the ballot proposition that would scrap our current partisan primaries and replace it with a new open primary. Next Friday, Political Roundtable will bring you a special Your Vote 2012 forum with the candidates for one of the most competitive districts in the state. I'm Jim Ninsel. Thanks for watching, and have a great weekend.